you everyone for being here. It's always great to connect with Rebecca, Nadia, Carlos, Winnie, the whole Vision to Reality team. And for today, we really wanted to spend some time giving practical advice on sales, building your pipeline, building a winning pipeline and a process. So just a quick question, Nadia. Am I good to start sharing my screen? Perfect. So let's start there. And you're able to see my screen now, right? Perfect. So for the agenda that we prepared today with the team, we wanted to start, first of all, understanding a bit of the audience. I see Lucille, Justin, some people here. So um, I wanted to do maybe a quick poll and feel free to raise your hand or maybe send a message on the chat. But I wanted to understand how many of you currently work on sales? Any hands up? Maybe worked on sales in the past or some experience related to sales, or maybe the third option would like to understand a bit more of sales and maybe explore a future path on the sales side. Perfect. Well, what I wanted to keep in mind for this presentation is whether you had some experience before, whether you're currently working on sales, or you want to maybe understand a bit more of this world, see what it's about. I wanted to bring some practical and a bit of theory and why I feel that we need some structure in order to have a winning sales operation. So this is mainly for everyone that is a bit interested in sales, no matter if it's for today, if it was in the past, if it's coming in the future. But talking about the agenda, we wanted to focus on four main topics. The first one is understand your pipeline, and when we talk about pipeline, is the pool of people that you will have to close that business, to start those partnerships. After that, we want to move into building the foundation of that pipeline, of that sales process. After that, it's about closing the business, that closing equation. And at the end, I wanted to bring some practical guides or practical tools that might help you with this operation. So I'll get started with the first piece, which is pipeline as a life cycle. And I don't know how many of you have studied a bit of sales and the concept. Maybe a lot of you have seen what we call a sales funnel. And this is mainly the old way thinking about sales because basically the idea is you pour a bunch of leads, a few deals fall out of the bottom. And the problem is that once you have that conversion, the relationship is over. That's how the maybe older, more traditional kind of sales used to work. And the problem is that with the relationship being over, you didn't really continue a process. It was just maybe getting some customers. After that, you started that funnel again where you had leads coming in at the top, and then you had a conversion rate. The more modern approach here is really thinking about your pipeline as a life cycle. And when we think about this, is you think about the moment you close a deal, you are not done, but you are just beginning that relationship. And that deal closed becomes the source for new opportunities through that repeat sales process that we call upsells or cross sells. Upsells meaning how can we get someone to use a bit more of our service, of our product, or if we talk about cross sells, how can we get these people to maybe leverage other services that we have or our product in different capacities. And when we talk about this life cycle, there are several theories, several types of structures, and several ways to really think about the steps. But today we wanted to focus on three main pieces. Number one being building the foundation. Number two, closing the equation. And then number three, it's about expanding that relationship. But today we'll mainly focus on the foundation, which is absolutely key. And then in the second point, which is the closing equation and expanding the relationship, we will be touching on both of those together. So I'm saying that building the foundation is probably the key takeaway that I would encourage you to have from today's conversation, because this is where I spend most of my time today. As you know, and as Nadia was saying, I've had the privilege of working in sales in different capacities. The first time I was doing sales, it was at a baseball team at Diablos Rojos, or the Mexico Red Devils. They are two times champions in a row back in Mexico City, largest baseball team, professional baseball team in Mexico. So you can imagine the passion in Mexico City, brand new stadium. That was the first sales experience I had. It was selling sponsorships, experiences, not a lot on the maybe ticketing side of things, but more on the sponsorships. After that, when I moved to Vancouver, I started to experience a bit more of the ad sales with Canada Wide Media. We have the magazines, we have digital media, and then I had the privilege to start working on sales at Boomi. So why I'm trying to maybe recap this is because this is by far the most critical part of the process, because you cannot solve a problem that you don't fully understand. When I was at the baseball team, if I didn't know why someone was going to buy a sponsorship, why they wanted to be part of a team, if they just wanted the exposure, if they wanted the team so that they could bring some executives, if it was because they would bring some people where they would close business, I wouldn't have been able to sell them anything because I didn't understand that. On the Canada White side, or the magazines and their experience, if I didn't understand what someone was trying to do with their marketing strategy, with their communication strategy, maybe they didn't know what they thought they needed. And you could say, hey, Rob or Roberto, maybe they were going to buy exactly what they thought they wanted, and you had the sale. Maybe you're right. But if it was not the best decision, if that was not the best solution for their problem, maybe they are not going to renew with us. Maybe they are not going to buy more. Maybe they are not going to explore other products. And that's why we need to start in discovery. So you have to think about it in different ways. And maybe some questions to start here is, do they have a clear pain point? If not, maybe we need to help them with that. Now, what is the real world consequence of that pain, or on their business, their life? You will see that maybe when we start thinking about discovery and pains and understanding someone's goals, we can talk about different theories and different kind of methodologies like Sandler or Medpic or Command of the Message. All of them talk about how you need to go deeper into the real business issue, deeper into the personal motivation that will allow someone to make a purchase. So that's what you are trying to understand here. And also, an important point here is, what does success look like for these people? So we focus on powerful questions to understand the customer's current state versus the desired future state. And as I said, we can leverage different tools here, but the goal is not to sell them your solution. The goal here is to help them articulate their own problem so that they clearly see in your solution a better answer for how they are doing things, an answer to their problem. So two key takeaways that we should take from the pipeline, then the new approach and pipeline as a life cycle, but really the foundation for everything here is: number one, discovery is king, and number two, discovery never ends. Something that you will see is that maybe you had a first conversation, you try to understand the problem, you try to understand the issue until you get that contract signed, and even then you will always try to understand more and more and more of your prospect's problem and why they should buy your product. Now, moving into the closing equation, this is a really interesting part. And here I wanted to maybe ask a question to the audience and the people that we have today here. What do you think is normally what makes a company successful? Do you think is the product? like having a good product, or is it the proof, maybe how you've done it before? Is it maybe the value that you are able to show? This is something that maybe you can think about, but the quick answer is absolutely the value. Value is the number one thing that we need to start sharing with our prospects, because this is where we transition from understanding that problem to presenting that solution. But it's not about selling the features. It's not about selling your product. If you start your process once you understand the product, saying my product does XYZ, this is what competitors maybe also have on their website. They can copy them. They can share mainly what you're saying. And today, I would encourage you to maybe do some research on maybe a piece of software or technology or product that you like. You will see that maybe the three Google searches or the three Google results that you get are very similar. So value is the impact of those features. Value is the ROI, the return of investment. Value is what will make you tie what you heard from that discovery and from understanding the problem, and how your product will help them solve those issues. So instead of saying, for example, if we are talking about a software example, instead of saying our software has an automated reporting feature, something that maybe we can start thinking about is our software's automated reporting will save your team 5 hours a week, so that you, Mr. CEO, CFO, Mr. Director of XYZ area, so that you can do that something that you told me is what keeps you up at night, so that you can do that something that will save you money, so that you make that something that will generate more revenue. And something important to consider here is that normally when you are selling a product, when you are selling services, when you are selling software, anything that you are selling, normally there are three reasons why someone would buy from you. Number one is they want to save money, reduce costs. Number two is they want to increase the money they are making, make more money, increase revenue. Or number three, maybe if we are in this more modern world, we can talk about compliance, staying compliant, maybe more secure, maybe reducing risks. But that ultimately leads to either make more money, reduce risks so that you can still make more money, or reduce risk so that you don't lose money. So two takeaways here: how do I help my customer, my prospect, make more money, or how do I help them save money? And there's a specific point here with the proof side of things, where it's always helpful to share how you've done it before. But here, the important piece is to become a trusted advisor. It's not just sharing a success story because it looks nice, because it's worked in the past, but more because you need to share that your prospects can trust you. And I wanted to share a quick story here. When I was doing my onboarding at Boomi, I don't know why, but the main thing that I remember from my time doing that initial learning and understanding the technology, the process, the structure, how we did our value selling, something that I will always remember is that maybe a dozen of people told me, remember, people buy from people they like. And here, this doesn't mean that, oh, if you're a nice guy, a nice woman, a nice person, people will buy from you. But absolutely, people will buy from people they trust. And people will buy and will keep buying from people that can help them keep achieving those results. So let's keep in mind those two things in terms of make money or save money, because that would ultimately lead to the conversion, to the decision, to keeping a prospect. And then the relationship side of things, really important because of the trusted advisor component. And this is why a good discovery process and a strong post-sale relationship are so vital. Here, just to talk a bit about the current business side of things, or when we're talking about cross-selling and upselling, I think we need to go back to discovery and the value of things. It's probably the same kind of methodology and the same kind of mentality that we have to have with this customers that we already have acquired. Because if we just come to them and maybe we're talking about services, maybe we are talking about products, maybe we're talking about technology, but if we just come to them and say, hey, Mr. Customer, we also have ABC feature or we have XYZ new product, we are getting away from the value side of things. So what I would encourage you is if you have the opportunity to maybe practice this with your current customers, it's since you have shared that you want to get to point number one, we have specific feature that will help you get there in ABC way. So just something to keep in mind, something to try to practice. And remember, point number one, pipeline as a life cycle. Discovery never ends. We are trying to keep a loop here where we understand problems. We really guide our prospect around understanding their issues. What is the impact and the value that they will get through our product? And then we start again. We try to understand because we are in an evolving world, in evolving markets, and we need to stay dynamic on that end. And now I just wanted to briefly touch on some sales tools that might be helpful when maybe you're starting a new business. Maybe you already have a process, but you want to start doing some things in a more automated fashion. Maybe start using technology to maybe increase a bit of the productivity that you have in these kind of processes. And I wanted to bring an example on an enterprise example, something that a lot of companies use today, but maybe the equivalent on a free or more affordable alternative. So probably a lot of you know what a CRM is on the customer relationship management side. That's where you track your leads, who's your customer, maybe a centralized source of truth for the information on those prospects, those leads. There are a lot of free alternatives. I just brought a couple here in terms of prospecting and data. Same here, as you know, on LinkedIn, ZoomInfo, those are like the giants in terms of an enterprise example. There are a lot of free versions that I would encourage you to use, and that if you spend some time, they will be really helpful in terms of engagement and automation. Maybe this is when we start talking about how can I keep a cadence to nurture my current customers. If I'm trying to get some new customers, how can I reach them in a more automated fashion? I try to get some as Gmass, Mailshake, some simple personalized emails to start. If you're starting your business, do some personalized emails and start sending that, see how that works. And then on the AI and intelligence side of things, something that I would recommend to anyone in this world is start learning how to leverage Chat GPT, Gemini, any AI model to be more efficient. It's your best personal assistant at probably no cost for most versions. Start studying discovery there. Start studying your process. Talk with them about what you're doing today, how you could do it better. Ask about some methodologies that are proven. Ask about some success stories that maybe ChatGPT or Gemini will find in some articles, in some use cases. So this is where I think a lot of people can start even just getting an idea on the process, on what to do better, on brainstorming. But this is kind of a free alternative to a best in class approach in terms of technology. So with that team, I think I was a bit faster than I expected to go through this. I wanted to see if maybe Nadia, we can start jumping into some questions, and then we can go back into some content, whatever we feel is best.
Yeah, of course. So a question is, can you share how do you use AI with a couple of examples?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Oof. I mean, in my current company, we are trying to be an AI first company. So I could really talk about how we are trying to leverage AI internally, and there's a whole strategy there. Personally, I really try when I'm trying something new, and I will get more specific, but every time I'm trying a new process, every time I'm trying a new strategy, I try to really have a conversation with Gemini and ChatGPT and see what are the thoughts there. Um, Latest example that I have is I have a conference that I'm attending in October, and I wanted to understand maybe what was the best approach to start getting some conversations, some in-person conversations there. And just to give you maybe an easy example, I never thought about the partners that we have. In technology, you have a lot of partners that will help you maybe implement your software. Maybe you have partners that will complement your software. I never thought about reaching to many of those. And that is how I was able to start landing some meetings. Maybe an easier example and something that would be a bit more relevant here. I always use AI for cadences, for messaging. I try to have this is my target audience. This is the specific message that I have in mind. I want 5 emails that will include this content. Give me some ideas. And with AI, the beauty of it is that it's a conversation. So you can maybe try to refine and be a bit shorter, more concise. Maybe if it's too vague, give us a couple of examples. If you have maybe some of the more paid versions, or if you are not sharing information that might be, how can I say, maybe a bit delicate to share with AI, you can even give some success stories that you've experienced before, maybe something that you tried in the past and that worked, and that will start incorporating the success into your stories. So those are maybe two examples that I have. And the third one, and something that I'm starting to use more and more, is to practice discovery. Um, you might think that this is something maybe overrated, or that I'm spending a lot of time talking about discovery when it's just maybe the initial part of a whole sales cycle. But you have no idea how I see the difference between a deal that had, or an opportunity, a business that had a strong discovery versus something that didn't. When you do great discovery, and you can really go deep into this, and just to give you an example, we follow a methodology called MEDPIC. In MEDPIC, you need to understand metrics, you need to understand who's your economic buyer. You need to understand the decision criteria. You need to understand the decision process. When you get to that point, when you need to understand who's involved, what's the process to decide on the solution, what's the process to purchase, what's the timeline, what are the specific points that they will be looking at, that's when you realize the value of discovery. So going back to the question, Nadia, on how to leverage AI, if you're experiencing some challenges in your discoveries, if you feel that you're missing good information to attach value, go to Gemini, create a gem, or go to ChatGPT and create a chat where you say, hey, I'm a salesperson selling ABC product, ABC service. This is my target persona. Help me with discovery. And you can even do it in your phone with some voice converse, like with the conversational experience, and try to practice your discovery. Say that each practice will take 5 questions on your side, and then you'll get feedback. Those are maybe 2, 3 examples on how to leverage AI today that I think are relevant.
And a follow-up question someone had was, do you have any tips to practice discovery?
Well, I just gave you a really good one, which is AI. Second one is, if you are a part of a team, I would say that it's a must to have role plays to practice with your peers, because not only you trying to do better questions, but sitting on the other side of the table and answering to those questions is something that will really help you understand the kind of questions that you want to start asking. To give you an example, and this is something that I am doing tomorrow with my team, we will sit we will have a Zoom meeting, and something that we do, and it's really fun, is I will be, for example, the prospect or the customer, and I have 3 people that are kind of the salesperson. So I could say, Nadia, I want ABC. How do you do this? And then Nadia will reply, but then I'll say, Jimmy, how do you work on whatever? And that way you have a whole team engaged, and you get different perspectives on the same conversation, on the same kind of scenario. So those are maybe two good examples that I have. And I mean, if you want to be a bit more old school, books. There are plenty of books out there in very different formats. You could have something a bit more conversational. You can have something very specific in terms of theory. But I think AI, practice, and books would be great resources.
What are the best benefits for you on the CRM side, and how do you leverage it?
Benefits on the CRM side and how I leverage it. Woof. For me, the CRM is key to understand where I've gone before, where I should go, pending items, understand my customers. And of course, the larger the business is, the more critical and the more important a CRM can look like. What I would say is that data today, and maybe we will get a bit nerdy here, but data is one of the most important assets that a business can have. If you think about your business, your customers, understanding when they bought, what they bought, what was the process when they bought something, if they got a new product, if they expanded their usage of your product, all that data is what will ultimately allow you to make some analysis and start strategizing ahead. So you can think of your CRM first of all as a way to keep your process organized and have everything under a single umbrella, and understand if you have any pending items, who is new to the business, maybe who has shown some intent. A lot of the times, a CRM is linked to maybe some of those marketing efforts, so that you get a lead, it will be in your CRM. You need to start working it there, but also it can be just a collection of information for you to start either doing some analysis or start working your prospects, your customers based on your data.
Awesome. So, does anyone else have any additional questions they'd like to ask right now?
Yeah, Roberto, great presentation. I love it. Great tip. I think I learned a lot of value to a lot of people. So my question, does everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So my question is, so Roberto, how do you manage your relationships? You've talked before about kind of people buy from people, people buy from kind of likable people. So how do you manage your relationship building? Like, how do you manage yourself in different in-person and the kind of virtual interactions? Do you have any tips, any things that any kind of recommendations that you could give to anyone starting in the sales side?
Yeah, I mean, great question, Carlos. I think we go back to discovery and that initial state of the process, because I would say number one thing that will help you is listening. You will like someone that listens to you. Like I tried this experiment. If you are meeting someone new, if maybe you are in a party, in a family reunion, you're meeting someone new. If you ask questions and you ask more questions as follow-ups on what they are sharing, and you show genuine curiosity, I'm sure that if you ask someone else, or if you get someone else to ask that person what they thought about you, they will like you. So with sales, it's kind of a similar process, because you need to show that you care about their problems. If you go back to the discovery piece, and you remember, Carlos, maybe that when you're doing your discovery, that initial stage of the cycle, and something that you practice along the way, you're focusing on your prospects or your customers' issues, their challenges, their problems, what keeps them up at night, what maybe is losing them money, what maybe is getting them away from getting that money. So on the relationship side of things, the more you show commitment to listening, to understanding, to really trying to be that trusted advisor, that I would say is part one of the equation. How do you really show that you understand what they are trying to achieve? Then number two, in terms of how maybe you nurture the relationship with current customers, or maybe you have a really well-defined pain, but we are now trying to work towards a solution and showcasing how we can address that. I think here is where the being a trusted advisor piece really comes into play, because depending on the industry that you're at, I can talk a lot about the tech side of things because that's maybe where I've had most of my experience. But today, with AI as an example, and maybe with any industry, with any company that has some AI related in a specific offering, in a specific new product, a lot of what we are doing today is guiding our prospects, guiding our customers. So being the trusted advisor means, how can I make some investment on my side in terms of time, of knowledge, on experience that I have, and guide my prospect to maybe start realizing some challenges that they didn't know they had. Maybe this is something that will work more in the long run. Maybe this is something that you need to, of course, invest more time, because it's not that immediate pain that it's burning that they need to solve yesterday. But it's the way to manage the relationship. It's the way to start going into that upsell, into that cross sell, and I think it works for any kind of industry. If you are able to bring your perspective into the market, into the industry that you're trying to help, that is something that will ultimately guide you to become a trusted advisor for customers, for prospects, and of course that will help the relationship.
You mentioned that the pipeline is a life cycle. What do you mean by this?
Pipeline as a life cycle, if we go back to that slide, here it is. So I think pipeline as a life cycle touches a bit more on the repeated process instead of just thinking about a funnel. And you will say, okay, but we need to start somewhere. Ultimately, we are talking about a conversion. Yes, the problem is that maybe what we don't love about the funnel idea is that you will get a lot of people, it will get narrower, 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 but at some point you need to close something. If you think about sales in that way, maybe you're just trying to repeat your process in a way that maybe 20% of the people will get to the last stage, then 5 or 10% of the people will actually convert. And that's a good number for you. That's where you thought you could be. When we move into the life cycle, and as you can see, we go from discovery, proposal, the onboarding, the upsell. Here we are talking about the strategic partnership, and maybe to the question that Carlos was bringing up sometime like before this question. It's more about how do we continue being that trusted advisor towards the cycle. And yes, it can start maybe with that funnel on, hey, I have some marketing efforts, I'll get some conversion. But what you are not seeing there is that on the life cycle idea, maybe you will have customers that will bring more customers. So that is something that I think is key to keep in mind. And it's maybe a modern, but not that modern idea. It's just a really good way to think about how you're managing your business as a never ending process. I think discovery and the pipeline as a life cycle concepts both have this never ending part on the equation, where the more you do it, the more you keep it as a loop, the more value you will be able to get for your prospects, for your customers, and ultimately the more businesses that you will get, the more partnerships that you will get.
What are your best strategies to prospect and also with lead generation?
Sorry, Nadia, what are the strategies for what? Sorry.
To prospect.
Okay, prospecting. This is interesting. Um, I mean, for prospecting, the number one thing that I think we should all understand in any business is who's your ideal customer. I think if you're not able to define that ideal customer profile, you could be spending a lot of resources, of time, of material, of messaging on the wrong audience. Once you're able to define who that ICP or that ideal customer profile is, I think that's when you start narrowing down what is important for them. What are some common challenges today? Challenges that they are facing today. What are some ways that my product could help me, could help them? And then is when you start maybe tailoring that very specific outreach. Now, if we want to be very actionable or very hands-on into how to execute on that outreach, today you like we live in a world and in a modern market where AI technology can really help you to have a customized approach, but doing still some automation. As an example, what I normally try to do with my outreach is try to find a pool of people that share some common characteristics. It could be they are part of the same industry. Maybe in my specific example, they use a specific technology that we work well with. It could be that they are doing some acquisitions or they are going through mergers in a more macro perspective. Once I have that list or that report, that group of people that share some common characteristics, I try to be very personalized in terms of the first email. But what you will realize is that since they all share these common characteristics, you won't spend as much time tying the issue or the hypothesis that you have into their into how it could help them. So I think something that helps a lot here is to have some specific structure into your emails. Um, One that I really like is called Why You Now from Hoffman, and what it talks about is why you means why am I trying to reach you today at some point in time, and you are talking about that. So it could be Mr. Prospect, I am reaching out because I saw XYZ. At my company, we help similar customers doing ABC. Do you have some time to connect? A lot of the times, the more concise you are, the better. Of course, there will be some customization. Of course, it's a personalized email. But as I shared before, when you have that group with individuals with common characteristics, it makes the whole experiment easier. And then we move into the automation, into the cadence, into the messaging that you have previously developed and maybe will resonate with all of them. So I think that's how I would start my outreach and my prospecting.
So in the case of a completely cold lead, how would you go about getting their contact information if you don't have their email?
So I think there are some tools that I had here. Let me go. So as you can see here on the prospecting and data, I know, first of all, LinkedIn, if you're trying to do sales and you don't have a LinkedIn today, I would say that that's the first thing you should finish this workshop and start doing. Go to LinkedIn, start connecting with some people that you want to connect with, to engage with. And when you're starting, I think that's the best way to make a human connection. When you're there, maybe share a bit about you, share why you're reaching out to them, and you can practice the why you now, and maybe start having some conversations there. If you don't have the possibility to connect with them on LinkedIn, or maybe you send something, but you really want to connect with that person, I've tried Hunter.io before. It helps you sometimes confirm emails. It helps you get some specific emails. Apollo, I've also heard that it's a really good tool. There are some, I honestly don't know how expensive it is to get started on ZoomInfo, but I think you can get a pretty decent starting package and start to get some emails, some tools for prospecting. You can filter by industry, you can filter by job title. You can do that manually on LinkedIn. So I think there are several technologies that you could start leveraging. And if you see the last option on AI and intelligence, ask ChatGPT. Say, Chat, I don't know where to start. This is what I'm trying to do. I would love to connect with this ICP. This is the idea that I have. Two questions. Do you think I have the right ICP and the right strategy? And second question, can you recommend some free tools that I can start leveraging to get some of those emails? And I'm sure that ChatGPT will give you maybe a more powerful response than this one.
Would you suggest getting LinkedIn Sales Navigator as an entrepreneur?
For that answer, I would need to know maybe what is your industry, what you're selling, what's your average deal size, and how much is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Um, Unfortunately, I don't know what's the entry level like price for Sales Navigator. Um, from my experience, I think you could spend that money on somewhere on another platform. Ultimately, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, it will give you maybe a more refined way to look for prospects to get people into a specific list, but it's not giving you their email. It is not giving you their phone number. It will give you some industry trends or maybe some AI research into why that specific person or that company could be a warmer lead. But I think maybe something like ZoomInfo or even on the engagement and automation side of things, I think that could be a better investment than Sales Navigator. Just a thought.